Iris Collier had been on her feet since 5 in the morning. 9 hours. The East Gallery stretched before her, long and cold, its stone floor pulling heat through the soles of her boots with quiet efficiency. She had polished the side tables. She had straightened the portrait frames, 17 of them, each one heavier than it looked. She had run a cloth along the window ledges and found the kind of dust that settles over decades, not weeks. Her feet ached down to the bone. The gallery was empty. She had checked twice. The door at the far end stood closed. The door behind her the same. No footsteps in the corridor. No bell from the upper floors. Just the cold stone smell and the beeswax she had worked into the wainscoting, and the silence that large houses keep when no one is watching them. At the far end of the gallery, beneath the largest portrait, sat a chair, carved oak, dark with age, positioned like a small throne beneath a woman in Jacobean dress, her painted eyes aimed at the middle distance with the particular calm of someone who has never been refused anything. The chair's armrests were thick, curved, worn smooth at the ends where hands had rested, long ago from the look of it. Dust lay undisturbed across the seat and along the grain of the wood. No one had sat in it recently. No one had sat in it in some time. Iris looked at the far door. Closed. She looked at the door behind her. Closed. She sat down. The wood was cold. For one moment, deeply, thoroughly cold, the chill of stone in November, the chill of a room that has not been warmed in years. Then it changed. Not gradually. Suddenly, the way a coal catches, one moment dark, the next alive. Warmth spread from the seat through her skirt, up through her spine, into her palms where they rested on the armrests. She pulled her hands back. The warmth followed, reaching for her fingers like something that recognized the shape of them. She pressed her palms flat against the oak. The dust on the armrests was gone. Not brushed away. Gone as if the wood had drawn it in. The grain beneath her fingertips shifted, not moved. Shifted, the way old timber settles when familiar weight returns to it after a long absence. Iris looked up at the portrait. The Jacobean woman looked back. Still, painted, watching. "It is just a chair," Iris said. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. The gallery swallowed it. The warmth continued to spread. She sat very still and told herself she was imagining it. She was tired. 9 hours on stone floors made a person imagine all manner of things. The chair was old, and the gallery was cold, and the contrast between the two made the wood feel warmer than it was. That was all. That was the whole of it. The grain shifted again beneath her palms. She was still telling herself this when footsteps sounded in the corridor. The far door opened. Mr. Hale came through it carrying a candlestick, his coat precise, his expression arranged in the particular neutral of a man who has managed a great house for 26 years and expects to find nothing in it that surprises him. He saw her. He stopped. The candlestick tilted. Hot wax dripped onto his cuff. He did not look at it. He did not look at anything except Iris in the chair, his face going white, not pale, not flushed with anger, but white, the color of paper, of a man whose body has understood something before his mind has caught up with it. Iris stood immediately. Her training moved faster than her confusion. "Stand up," Mr. Hale said. The words came out flat, stripped of everything except urgency. "I am sorry, Mr. Hale." She was already on her feet, her hands at her sides. I did not know it was. How long have you been sitting there? His voice had steadied, barely. A minute, perhaps two. My feet, the chair. He took one step forward and stopped himself. His eyes moved to the armrests, to the place where the dust had been. His jaw tightened. Did you feel anything? Iris looked at her hands. The warmth had faded the moment she stood, but something remained in her palms. A memory of heat, a residue she had no name for. She straightened her left cuff, then her right, pressing the fabric flat under her thumbs until the edge aligned precisely with her wrist bone. It was warm, she said. Mr. Hale set the candlestick on the gallery table. The wax had hardened on his cuff in a pale ridge. He did not clean it. He did not look at it. He looked at the chair, then at Iris, then at the chair again. Do not move, he said. Do not leave this room. Do not sit in that chair again. He left. His footsteps were fast, faster than a man of his composure should walk. The gallery settled around her. The cold had pulled back from the chair's end of the room. She could feel it from where she stood, 3 feet away. Warmth radiating from the oak like a hearth with no fire in it. The portraits seemed closer than they had before. The shadows between the frames had deepened, thickened, gathered at the edges of the candlelight, as if the dark had opinions about what had just happened. Iris pressed her cuffs flat again. Left, then right. She waited. Mr. Hale returned in 4 minutes. She knew because she had been watching the candle flame, and it had barely moved. He was not alone. Lord Soren Ashcombe entered the east gallery, and the candles on the wall sconces leaned toward him. All of them. Not dramatically, not with any sound or gust of air. They simply inclined, the way flowers turn toward light, except this was the opposite of light. The shadows in the gallery corners deepened without cause. The temperature dropped near the door, near him, the cold arriving with him, the way cold arrives with winter. Not as an event, but as a condition. The chair's end of the gallery stayed warm. Iris stood where Mr. Hale had left her, hands clasped, posture straight. Posture was the only armor a lady's maid possessed. She had learned that in her first position and every position since. Lord Ashcombe did not look at her. He looked at the chair. He walked to it. Not quickly, not slowly, with the unhurried certainty of a man moving toward something he has been waiting for without knowing he was waiting. He extended one hand and placed his palm flat on the armrest where Iris's hand had been. He held it there, his eyes closed. The gallery went very quiet. Even the candle flames steadied, as if holding themselves still out of respect, or fear, or something that lived between the two. When his eyes opened, they were not gray. They had been gray in the doorway, pale, the color of winter sky. Now they were dark. Burgundy, deep and old, the color of something that had been red once and had aged past red into something richer and stranger. The candlelight caught them wrong, or caught them exactly right. "How long?" he said. His voice had the quality of a room that has been closed for years, not rusty, not damaged, but carrying the particular resonance of disuse spanning longer than it should. "She says a minute," Mr. Hale said. "Perhaps 2. And it warmed. Not a question. She says it warmed." Lord Ashcombe removed his hand from the armrest. He turned to Iris. He looked at her the way he had looked at the chair, with the full attention of someone assessing something that should not exist but does, something that requires careful accounting before any other response is possible. "What is your name?" "Collier, my lord." Her voice came out steady. She was grateful for that. "Iris Collier. I am the new—" "I know what you are." A pause. The candles leaned. "Sit down." Iris did not move. Her mind turned the words over, looking for the meaning she must have missed. Mr. Hale said, "My lord, sit down, Miss Collier." She sat. The chair warmed faster this time. Not gradually, not suddenly, instantly, as if it had been waiting the whole time she was standing, as if the brief separation had been an inconvenience. It was glad to end. The wood grain shifted beneath her palms. The armrests gleamed where her hands rested. The oak smooth and dark and alive in a way that wood had no right to be alive. Mr. Hale took one step backward. Lord Ashcombe stood motionless. His hand hung at his side. His eyes held that impossible dark color, and the shadows in the gallery corners had settled around him the way shadows settle around furniture, as if he were simply part of the room's arrangement, something the dark had long since made peace with. He did not breathe. She noticed that now. The gallery was cold enough that breath should show. Mr. Hale's showed, small white clouds with each exhale. Lord Ashcombe's did not. Nothing rose from him. Nothing moved in the air around his mouth. She noticed it the way she noticed a crooked seam or a collar set wrong, a detail that did not fit, that her trained eye caught before her mind knew what to do with it. She gripped the armrests. "What is this chair?" she said. Lord Ashcombe looked at her. Something moved through his expression. Not warmth, not quite, but the precursor to warmth. Recognition, perhaps. The particular stillness of a man who has waited a very long time for a question he already knows the answer to. "That is not a question for tonight." He turned to Mr. Hale. "She sleeps in the east wing, the room beside the gallery." Mr. Hale's voice came out careful. "My lord, that room has not been to prepare it." Lord Ashcombe looked at Iris one final time. His eyes moved from her face to her hands on the armrests, to the gleaming oak beneath her palms. The dark color in his eyes receded. Gray returned, slow and quiet, like dawn replacing something older. "You may sit in it whenever you wish," he said. "No one will tell you otherwise." He left. The gallery warmed by 2 degrees the moment he was gone. She felt it on her face, in her lungs, in the air she drew in. As if the cold he carried had been the only cold remaining, and without him the room could finally exhale. Mr. Hale stood 6 feet away. The wax on his cuff had dried to a pale ridge. His breathing was too fast for a man who prided himself on composure. She could hear it, shallow and quick, the breathing of someone who has witnessed something they cannot file away in any existing category. He had no words left. She could see that plainly. Iris kept her hands on the oak armrests. The wood was warm beneath her palms, solid, steady, alive with something she had no name for. Above her, the Jacobean woman in the portrait watched with painted eyes that had seen, perhaps, everything this room had ever held. The candles burned straight now. The shadows had settled. The gallery was quiet. Iris sat in the chair that had not accepted anyone in longer than she had been alive, in a house she had worked in for 3 days, and she did not know what she had done. She knew only that the wood remembered her hands, that the master of Ashcombe Hall had looked at her the way he looked at something precious and inexplicable, that Mr. Hale, 26 years a butler, stood behind her with dried wax on his cuff and nothing left to say. The warmth held. It did not fade. It simply just held. Iris sat in the chair that had not accepted anyone in longer than she had been alive, and the warmth held. It simply held. She did not move for another minute. The candles burned straight. The shadows had settled into the corners like obedient things, and the portrait above her watched with the patience of paint and time. Then she rose, smoothed her skirt, and walked to the door Mr. Hale had come through. Her boots made no sound on the stone. The gallery released her without ceremony. She slept badly in the east wing room, which smelled of cedar and long disuse, and woke before 5 to the sound of a housemaid's bucket in the corridor. The room was cold in the ordinary way of rooms, the cold of stone and autumn, nothing more. She dressed in the dark. Her fingers found each button by feel, each seam by habit. She aligned her collar edges against her throat, pressed her cuffs flat, and went downstairs. The servants' hall was warm from the range. Toast, tea, the smell of rendered fat from something Mrs. Locke had started before dawn. Iris stepped through the door, and the room went quiet. Not gradually, at once. Mary, the kitchen maid, sat with both hands around her cup. Her eyes moved to Iris's hands the moment she entered, a quick, involuntary drop of the gaze, as if she expected to find them changed. Thomas the footman looked at the table. Mrs. Locke set a plate down in front of the empty chair at the end of the bench, the movement deliberate and silent, and stepped back to the range without a word. Iris sat. She arranged her napkin. "Good morning," she said. 3 seconds passed. The range ticked. A coal shifted. Then Mr. Hale came through the servants' door, coat precise, expression arranged in its customary neutral. He looked at Iris. He looked at the table. "Miss Collier," he said. "After breakfast, my office." The table exhaled. She felt it. A collective loosening, as if the room had been holding something in and had finally been given permission to set it down. Mary turned her cup in her hands. She said it quietly, almost to herself. "What did you do?" Iris reached for the teapot. "I sat in a chair." Mary's cup stilled. "That is not just a chair." Iris poured her tea. The stream was steady. She kept her wrist level and her grip easy, the way she had been trained, and she did not look up until the cup was full. "No," she said. "I am beginning to understand that." No one spoke again until Mr. Hale called for more toast. His office was small and orderly, a single window facing the east garden. The morning light came through it thin and gray, the kind of light that illuminates without warming. A clock on his desk ticked with the steady indifference of a mechanism that has no opinion about what it measures. Mr. Hale sat behind the desk. Iris stood before it. He did not offer her a seat, and she did not ask for one. He set his hands flat on the desk surface. He looked at them for a moment, as if deciding something. "The chair in the East Gallery," he said, "was made in 1623. It was commissioned by the first Lord Ashcombe for his wife." He paused. "When she died, no one could sit in it, not comfortably, not without the wood going cold under their hands." Iris's fingers found the edge of his desk. Smooth wood, old and dense. She pressed her thumb along the grain without thinking. "Cold?" she said. "The opposite of what you felt." Mr. Hale's voice was even, careful. "The wood rejects them. It goes cold, hard. Some have said it pushes." He paused. In 26 years, I have seen 3 people attempt it. Lady Ashcombe's niece in 1802, the chair went so cold she could not release the armrests for a full minute. Her hands were frostburned. Iris lifted her thumb from the desk edge. She pressed her palms together instead, feeling the warmth of her own skin, the familiar pressure of her own grip. "Frostburned," she said. She wore gloves for a fortnight. Mr. Hale's eyes did not move from her face. The second was a solicitor who came to inventory the estate in 1819. He sat for perhaps 10 seconds. He left the house the same afternoon and declined to return. A beat. The third was a young man who claimed connection to the Ashcombe line. He did not last 5 seconds. He said afterward that the wood felt like a living thing trying to remove him. The clock ticked. The light through the window did not improve. "The chair warmed for you," Mr. Hale said. "In 200 years, it has warmed for no one." Iris looked at her hands. The memory of warmth was still there. Not a sensation now, but a knowledge. The way a person knows the shape of a room they have stood in only once. "Why?" she said. Mr. Hale looked at her. Something moved behind his eyes. Not evasion, exactly, but the particular restraint of a man who has decided how much to say and is holding to that decision. "That is not a question I can answer, Miss Collier." He straightened the pen on his desk. "That is a question for the master." The clock ticked on. She heard her own pulse in her ears, visible, she suspected, at her throat. She went back to the gallery. She had not planned to. Her feet carried her there after Mr. Hale dismissed her, up the servants' stair and along the east corridor, and she stood in the doorway for a moment, before she understood she had come deliberately. The gallery was empty. Cold morning light lay across the stone floor in pale rectangles. The portraits watched from their frames, 17 of them, each one heavier than it looked. The chair sat at the far end beneath the Jacobean woman's portrait. Iris walked toward it. She stopped 2 feet away. She looked at it, really looked, the way she had not looked before, when it had been only a chair and her feet had been aching. The oak was dark, carved with leaves and vines that wound up the legs and along the armrests. At the top of the backrest, where the carving was densest, something looked back at her. A face, perhaps, or a knot in the wood, shaped by accident into eyes and a mouth. She could not decide which, and the uncertainty sat uneasily in her chest. The armrests were smooth where her hands had rested. Smooth and clean, the dust gone, the grain gleaming faintly in the gray morning light. She could feel the warmth from where she stood. A faint radiance, sourceless, steady. The warmth of a hearth in a room with no fireplace. She reached out. One finger. She touched the armrest. The wood warmed under her touch immediately, not gradually, at once. She pulled back. Her hands came together at her waist. She straightened her left cuff, pressing the fabric flat under her thumbs until the edge aligned precisely with her wrist bone. Then her right. The familiar friction of cotton against her skin, the small, controllable order of it, the seam lying straight and true. Her eyes burned. Nothing had happened to her. Nothing had been taken. She was a lady's maid in a house she had worked in for 3 days, standing in a gallery before an old chair, and she was perfectly well. She pressed her cuffs flat again and told herself so. Something had been given. That was the difficulty. Something she had not asked for and could not return, and it sat in her chest with a weight she had no category for. Lord Ashcombe's voice in the gallery last night, "You may sit in it whenever you wish," had the quality of a pronouncement, Not permission. Something older than permission. "I only sat down because my feet hurt," she said aloud. The gallery did not answer. The chair was warm. Above her, the Jacobean woman watched with painted eyes that had seen, perhaps, everything this room had ever held. Every refusal, every frost-burned hand, every person the wood had tried to remove. Iris had not been removed. The smell of old oak and beeswax settled around her. The shadows between the portrait frames were still. She stood with her hands at her sides and looked at the chair that had been waiting 200 years for someone it recognized, and she felt, with a clarity that frightened her, that it was still waiting. Not patiently, eagerly. She stepped back. Then she heard it. Gravel. The particular crunch and roll of carriage wheels on the drive below. The sound carrying up through the gallery's single window with the cold morning air. Iris moved to the window. The carriage was black, lacquered to a high shine. A crest on the door she did not recognize. Gold on dark green, something heraldic and old. It drew to a stop before the main entrance with the precision of a vehicle that has made this journey before. The coachman descended. The door opened. Lady Beatrice Fenworth stepped out. She wore traveling clothes in deep gray, a morning amethyst at her throat catching what little light the morning offered. Her posture was the posture of a woman who enters houses she considers partly hers, shoulders back, chin level, her gaze moving across the facade of Ashcombe Hall with the assessing calm of someone taking inventory. She did not look up. She did not need to. She already knew what was there. Mr. Hale appeared at the entrance below. His coat was immaculate. His expression was the expression of a man who has been expecting this arrival and has prepared accordingly. Iris heard Lady Beatrice's voice rise from the drive, clear and carrying. "Is my cousin at home?" Mr. Hale's reply came measured and precise. "Lord Ashcombe does not receive before dusk, my lady." A pause. Brief. The pause of a woman unaccustomed to being told what someone does. "He will receive me. The blue drawing room is prepared for you, my lady." Another pause. Longer. Iris watched from the window as Lady Beatrice looked at the entrance, then at the house, then at something Iris could not see from her angle. "I will see the gallery first." Mr. Hale's pause was barely audible, but Iris heard it. 3 floors up, through glass and cold air, she heard the half-second of a man deciding something. "Of course, my lady." Iris turned from the window. The chair was warm behind her. She could feel it across the room. That sourceless radiance, steady and patient. The warmth of something that had been waiting, and was still waiting, and would go on waiting, regardless of who came through the door. Lady Beatrice's footsteps sounded on the main stair. Measured, unhurried. The footsteps of a woman who has never needed to hurry in any house she considered her own. Iris moved toward the far door. Her boots were quiet on the stone. She reached the doorway and stopped with her hand on the frame. Not quite through it. Not quite gone. Behind her, the gallery held its warmth. The chair gleamed at the far end. Armrests smooth and clean. The carved face at the top watching the door through which Lady Beatrice would come. The candles on the wall sconces had not been lit this morning, but the light at the chair's end of the room was warmer than the gray coming through the window had any right to produce. The footsteps reached the top of the stair. Iris stepped through the doorway. Iris stepped through the doorway and did not look back. She moved along the servants' corridor with her head down, her boots quiet on the stone, and told herself she had done the right thing by leaving. Lady Beatrice would have her gallery. The chair would be cold and still, and exactly what it had always been for everyone else, and that would be the end of it. She told herself that twice before she reached the stairs. In the servants' hall, the pressing board waited with 3 of Lady Beatrice's traveling blouses folded beside it. Thomas was polishing silver at the sideboard. Mary was mending near the window, her needle moving in small, precise arcs. Neither of them looked up when Iris entered, which meant neither of them knew yet what had arrived in the carriage. Iris set the iron to heat and smoothed the first blouse across the board. She pressed. The iron moved in long, steady strokes. The smell of warm linen rose around her, familiar and grounding, the particular comfort of work that had a right answer. She was halfway through the second sleeve when she heard it. Footsteps on the gallery floor above. One set, measured and unhurried. Then a pause. Then nothing. Iris pressed the iron flat and held it still. Above her, the east gallery waited. She knew its dimensions now, the way she knew the dimensions of any room she had worked in. By feel, by the particular quality of its silence. She knew where the chair sat. She knew the warmth it had given her without asking. She knew what Lady Beatrice had come to claim. The iron had gone too hot. She lifted it, tested the temperature against the back of her wrist, set it aside to cool. Her hands were steady. She made them stay that way. Upstairs, nothing moved. Then Lady Beatrice's voice came through the ceiling, muffled but carrying, the way voices carry in old houses where the stone transmits sound like a second skin. Iris did not hear the words. She heard the tone, flat, controlled, the tone of a woman who has expected one thing and received another. She picked up the iron again. She was pressing the collar points of the third blouse when Mr. Hale appeared in the doorway. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his coat immaculate, his expression arranged into its usual careful neutrality. But his eyes moved to Iris with a directness that was not usual. "Lady Beatrice has seen the gallery," he said. Iris kept her eyes on the collar. "Yes, Mr. Hale." She sat in the chair. The iron paused. 1 second. Then it moved again. "I see," Iris said. "The wood was cold." He let that sit for a moment. She waited. She adjusted her position. She waited again. It remained cold. Iris set the iron upright on its stand. She smoothed the collar with her fingers, pressing the points flat, aligning the edges with the seam. Her hand knew what to do even when the rest of her had gone very still. "She will want to speak with you," Mr. Hale said. "I expect she will." He did not move from the doorway. His gaze held something she had not seen in it before. Not quite pity, not quite warning. Something between the two. The look of a man who has watched this particular sequence of events before and knows where it leads. "The chair has been cold for 200 years, he said, "for everyone who has sat in it. 3 people in my tenure alone. All refused. All left the gallery shaken." He paused. "You are the first it has not refused." Iris looked at him. "I only sat because my feet hurt," she said. The words felt thinner than they had in the gallery, worn down by repetition. "Yes," Mr. Hale said. "I know." He unclasped his hands and clasped them again. "That may be precisely why." He left before she could answer. Thomas had gone very still at the sideboard. Mary's needle had stopped moving. Neither of them looked at Iris, which meant both of them had heard every word. Iris picked up the iron. Lady Beatrice arrived 12 minutes later. She appeared in the doorway, the way she had appeared on the drive, without announcement, without hesitation, with the particular authority of a woman who has never needed to knock. Her traveling clothes were still immaculate. The morning amethyst at her throat caught the lamplight and held it. Her gloves were back on her hands. Thomas went rigid at the sideboard. Mary pressed herself against the wall beside the window, her mending clutched in both fists. Lady Beatrice looked at Iris. "You are the one who sat in the chair," she said. Iris set the iron down carefully, upright on its stand. She straightened. Her hands went to her cuffs. A line, smooth, press, the seam lying flat and true under her thumbs. She turned to face Lady Beatrice fully. "Yes, my lady. That chair belongs to the Ashcombe bloodline." Lady Beatrice's voice was even, precise, each word placed like a stone. "It was made for the first Lady Ashcombe. It is not for servants." "I did not know what it was," Iris said. "I sat because my feet ached." Lady Beatrice's expression did not change. It did not need to. "Your feet," she said. The contempt was surgical, clean. The contempt of someone who has never once considered that feet might ache. "You sat in a 300-year-old artifact because your feet ached." Iris held her posture. Her hands stayed at her sides. "I meant no disrespect, my lady." "Disrespect?" Lady Beatrice moved 2 steps into the room. Not toward Iris, simply into the space, claiming it the way she claimed every space she entered. "You have no conception of what you have touched. That chair carries the history of this family. It carries our name, our line." She paused. "Your kind should learn to stand." Iris's hands stopped moving. Her eyes burned. The back of her throat tightened with something she refused to name. Her jaw locked, and she stood with her spine straight and her chin level and her hands fisted at her sides. And she took it. Because standing and taking it was what she had. Because she had been in this house 3 days and had no ground beneath her feet and nowhere else to go. She stood. She took it. She did not look away. The door behind Lady Beatrice opened. The temperature in the servants' hall dropped. Not gradually. Not the slow seep of cold air from an open window. It dropped the way a stone drops. Sudden, complete, with the weight of something that has decided to arrive. Lord Soren Ashcombe stood in the doorway. He had not been seen since the gallery the night before. He wore no coat. His shirt was white against the dark of the corridor behind him, and his hands were at his sides. And he was absolutely, completely still in the way that living things are not still. The candle on the sideboard nearest him leaned away from his presence, its flame bending toward the far wall as if trying to put distance between itself and him. His eyes were not gray. They were dark. Burgundy, deep and depthless, the color of something old and certain and awake. The shadows in the hall thickened at his back, pooling in the corners, stretching along the floor toward the pressing board. He looked at Lady Beatrice. Then he looked at Iris. He took in her rigid spine, her fisted hands, her eyes, which were wet at the edges, though she had not let a single thing fall. His gaze moved across her the way a man reads a document, carefully, completely, missing nothing. "Beatrice," he said. One word, quiet as a closing door. Lady Beatrice turned. Her hand found the doorframe. Her chin lifted on instinct, the reflex of a woman who has always been the most important person in any room she entered. She looked at Lord Ashcombe and understood, in the space of one breath, that she was not. Soren. Her voice had changed. Smaller. Still controlled, but smaller. I was simply speaking with the girl about— You sat in the chair, he said. Not a question. Not an accusation. A statement of fact, delivered with the flatness of someone who already knows every answer and is simply choosing which ones to speak aloud. Lady Beatrice's chin lifted another degree. It is my right, my line, my— The chair was cold for you. Silence. The room was cold, she said. The chair has been neglected for— The chair was cold for you, Beatrice. His voice did not rise. It did not need to. As it was cold for your father, as it was cold for every Fenworth who has touched it since 1793. The room held its breath. Thomas had backed against the far wall. Mary had gone so still she might have been painted there. The candle flame bent further, straining away from the doorway, throwing strange shadows across the stone floor. Lady Beatrice's hand tightened on the doorframe. Her knuckles went white. How could you possibly know what my father— I was there. 3 words. The temperature dropped another degree. Iris felt it on her arms, on the back of her neck, in the cold air moving against her wet eyes. The shadows between the door frame and the pressing board stretched and deepened, reaching across the floor like something alive. Lady Beatrice stared at him. Her mouth opened, closed. The color had left her face entirely, leaving the morning amethyst at her throat very bright against very pale skin. Lord Ashcombe looked at Iris again. His eyes held hers for one moment. Dark burgundy, steady, ancient. Something moved in them that she had no word for. Recognition, perhaps, or the particular attention of someone who has been watching from a distance and has decided to stop watching. He turned back to Lady Beatrice. The chair does not respond to lineage, he said. It does not respond to claim or birthright or name. His gaze moved to Iris. It responds to something else. He did not say what. The silence after those words was absolute. Even the candle flame had stopped moving. You will not speak to Miss Collier about the chair again, Lord Ashcombe said. His voice was quiet. Centuries quiet. The quiet of stone and deep water, and things that have outlasted every argument ever made against them. You will not speak to Miss Collier about standing, or about where servants belong. He looked at Lady Beatrice with eyes the color of old garnet. You are a guest in my house. Iris stood at the pressing board. Her spine was rigid. Her hands were fisted at her sides. Her eyes burned and her jaw ached from holding it level, and the iron beside her had gone cold on its stand. Forgotten. Lord Ashcombe's silhouette filled the doorway, shadow pooling at his feet. Lady Beatrice gripped the doorframe with white-knuckled hands. Her face drained of everything except the particular shock of a woman who has just learned that the house she considered partly hers belongs, entirely and completely, to something she does not understand. The words hung in the cold air between all of them. Something else. Lady Beatrice's footsteps retreated down the passage. Fast, uneven. The sound of a woman who had decided to move before her composure failed entirely. Thomas exhaled. The sound came out of him like something he had been holding since the doorway, long and slow and relieved. Mary unclenched her hands from her apron, one finger at a time, and the fabric fell back into its proper folds. The servants' hall fire crackled. Outside the window, distant and muffled, a voice called for the carriage to be brought round. Mr. Hale appeared at the passage door. He stood there a moment, taking in the room. The cold iron on the board, Iris's rigid spine, the wet edges of her eyes that she had not let become anything more. "Miss Collier," he said, "are you well?" Iris's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat on the pressing board. The wood was warm beneath her palms, solid, real. "I sat in a chair, Mr. Hale," she said. He looked at her steadily. "Yes, you did." His voice was careful, each word placed with the precision of a man who understood the weight of what he was saying. "And the chair sat with you." Mary pushed off from the wall. Her voice came out thin, still shaken. "She called you. She said your kind should—" "That is enough, Mary." Mr. Hale did not raise his voice. He simply said it, and it was enough. He looked at Iris. His expression did not soften exactly. It settled, the way a house settles when the wind drops. "No one in this house thinks you are what Lady Beatrice called you," he said. "No one." Thomas nodded from the sideboard. Small, deliberate. His chin dipped once and came back up, and he held Iris's gaze for a moment before looking away. The carriage wheels sounded on the gravel outside, then faded, then were gone. Iris pressed her palms harder against the wood and felt the shaking slow. The East Gallery was candlelit when she arrived that evening. The wall sconces burned in their brackets, and the light was warm and amber, falling across the portraits in long, soft strokes. The gallery looked different this way, less like a corridor of judgment and more like a room that had been waiting for someone to light it properly. The chair sat at the far end. It radiated heat she could feel from 10 feet away. Lord Ashcombe stood beside it. He did not sit. He never sat, she understood now. Not in any chair, not in any room she had seen him occupy. He simply stood, the way old things stand, as though furniture was an arrangement made for other people. Mr. Hale took his place at the gallery door, hands clasped, watching. Lord Ashcombe's hand rested on the carved back of the chair. His fingers were still. "The chair was made in 1623, he said. "For a woman He stopped. His hand moved slightly against the carved wood. "For someone who mattered." Iris looked at the portrait above the chair. She had looked at it before, on the first night, in the dark, when she had not yet understood what she was looking at. "The portrait above it," she said. "She has your face." Lord Ashcombe did not look up at it. He did not need to. "She was me," he said. The same words, the same weight, the same absolute, unhurried certainty. Iris did not flinch. She had spent 3 days accumulating evidence. The cold that moved with him, the shadows that pooled at his feet, the portrait that wore his features in Jacobean dress, the centuries he carried in his voice like sediment. "The Vampire King," she said. Something shifted in his expression. Not surprise. Something older than surprise. "Yes," he said. Mr. Hale at the door did not move. His face was composed. His hands were clasped behind his back. Lord Ashcombe looked at the chair. The chair was hers. When that life ended, the chair closed. It stopped accepting anyone. Not Ashcombe lineage, not servants, not guests. He paused. Cold wood and nothing more. For 200 years. The gallery held the silence. Mr. Hale stepped forward. "My lord." His voice was measured, each word deliberate. "In 26 years, I have watched this chair refuse every hand that touched it. I have watched it freeze Lady Ashcombe's niece until her fingers burned. I have watched 3 Fenworths and 2 curiosity seekers leave this gallery shaken. He looked at Iris. Miss Collier sat down because her feet hurt. The chair would not freeze her. It warmed. He turned to Lord Ashcombe. I have served this house long enough to know when something has changed that cannot be unchanged. The chair has chosen, my lord. Whether any of us understand why is beside the point. Lord Ashcombe's jaw tightened. The same small movement Iris had seen on the first night, in the dark, when he had looked at her sitting in the chair and gone absolutely still. Thank you, Hale, he said. Mr. Hale nodded. He retreated to the gallery door. His composure was immaculate. But Iris saw his hands, clasped behind his back, the knuckles white. The clock in the hall struck 9. The candles held steady. The shadows in the gallery corners were still for once, not moving. Lord Ashcombe turned to her. The chair responds to something I have spent 200 years trying to name, he said. It is not lineage. It is not worthiness. I do not know what it is. He paused. But I know what it is not. It is not an accident. I sat because my feet hurt, Iris said. And the chair warmed because you are what it has been waiting for. He did not explain further. The gallery held its breath around those words, and Iris let them settle into her the way warmth settles, slowly from the outside in. You are not a lady's maid in this house, Miss Collier, he said. I do not yet know what you are, but you are not that. Her eyes burned. She did not look away. She let him see. The wet edges, the held jaw, all of it. She let him read it the way he had read her in the servants' hall doorway, carefully and completely. My feet still hurt, my lord, she said. Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The ghost of one. The suggestion of a man who had not smiled in a very long time and found the muscles for it unfamiliar. Then sit, he said. Iris sat. The warmth came instantly, deep and steady, moving through the oak and into her palms, and up through her wrists and into her arms and along her spine. The wood grain shifted beneath her hands, almost imperceptibly, the way a living thing shifts when it settles into comfort. Accepting. Certain. The chair had been cold for 200 years. It was not cold now. Mr. Hale watched from the gallery door. His face was composed. His eyes were bright. Lord Ashcombe stood beside the chair. His hand rested on the carved back, 3 inches from her shoulder. He did not touch her. He did not sit. But he stood closer to that chair than he had stood in 2 centuries, and the distance between his hand and her shoulder was not absence. It was the particular nearness of something that has decided to stop moving away. The candles burned. The gallery was warm. Above the chair, the portrait of the Jacobean woman watched from her frame, and in the amber candlelight, her expression had changed. Or perhaps it had always looked that way, and Iris had simply not been sitting in the right place to see it. Welcome to Ashcombe Hall, Miss Collier, Mr. Hale said, from the door, very quietly. Iris's hands rested on warm oak. Lord Ashcombe's hand rested on the carved back, 3 inches from her shoulder. Mr. Hale stood at the gallery door, the candlelight steady behind him, the portrait watching above them all.